Welcome to another session of INF154. So in this session, I'm not going to talk about the theory. We are going to solve a very basic problem, which is the rock, paper, scissors game. So the prerequisite for this video is your if statement, the basics of if statements and switch statements. So, in summary, rock, paper, scissors game, it's a hand game usually played between two players in which each player simultaneously forms one of three shapes with an outstretched hand. These shapes are rock, which is a closed fist, then we have paper, which is a flat hand, and scissors, which is represented by a fist with the index and middle fingers extended, forming a V. So the basic rules of rock, paper, scissors is that rock beats scissors but loses to paper. Then scissors beats paper but loses to rock, and paper beats rock but loses to scissors. So in general, we have rock breaks scissors, scissors cuts paper, paper covers rock. So in this case, if one player chooses rock and the other player chooses rock, then it's a draw. Same with if one player chooses scissors and another player chooses scissors, it's a draw. Same with if one player chooses paper and another player chooses paper, it's a draw. Then if one player chooses rock and the other scissors, then the one with the rock wins because rock breaks scissors. If one player chooses rock and the other player chooses paper, then the player who chose paper wins because rock covers paper. Paper covers rock. Then you can go with these other two options. So before we can start with the problem, let's see. So this is the basics. Let's see what's the required problem. So you are required to simulate a rock, paper, scissors game where the user inputs an option. So the user can input rock, paper, or scissors. Then randomly generate an input for the computer, which is rock, paper, or scissors. Then display the winner. Validate the user's input if necessary, I guess. So this is the problem we are required to do. We want to simulate that rock, paper, scissors game. So when you are given any problem, the first thing that you have to do is your IPO model. So what are your inputs? What's the process? What's the output? So from this, you are required to simulate a rock, paper, scissors game where the user inputs an option. So the user, what are we getting from the user? We are getting the option that they choose. So that's our input. From that input, we can determine if we should use a text box, rich text box, a text box, or numeric up down combo box. In this case, our input is a text, so we need a text box or a combo box. Then randomly generate an input for the computer. So we need to generate a random option for the computer. Then we have to display the winner. So the output is just displaying if the user won or lost. So the solution is your IPO diagram. So you have to identify your inputs, your process, then the output. So in this case, as I stated, the input is the user input, the option that we get from the user. Then the computer input. The computer input is what we are going to generate randomly. So to generate the computer input, we need a random number. We cannot create like random strings. That's impossible. We can either create random variables, random integers or random doubles for now. But in Python, I think you can do that. Then output, we need the final result. We have to determine whether the user won, lost, or it's a draw. So that's the first step. From this, we can come up with the form design. So for the form design, I'm going to my Visual Studio Code. I'm going to need a label here, so I can put a label and I can just go to the properties and let me see, properties. Then I can change the text, maybe say rock paper scissors game. Here I'm not going to focus on the like appearance. You guys can take time to create that, but for me I'm just going to create a basic structure. Then you guys can create a nice one. Then I need this label, which is just rock paper scissors. Then I have to tell a user to enter an option. So or I can like put a button to display the instructions, even though they didn't mention anything about that. So I need a button. So a button for the instructions, and I need a label for the user to tell the user that choose your option. Let's say choose option. So we want the user to choose the option. Choose option. So the user is going to choose an option. Then here you can choose that the user can enter the answer in the message in a text box or in a combo box. I'm going to choose a combo box to avoid input validation, sort of, but you can choose a text box. So with this combo box, it's much easier, or it's much safer, because you are going to limit the user to choose between 3 options. So to enter values in this combo box, you just go to properties. Then let me see, did I select combo box? Yes, it's a combo box. So you go to properties, then there should be this thing of items. You will see items, then you just click there. Then here I just need rock, paper and scissors. The user can select from those. Scissors, the user can select from these 3. Then I need this button, which is instructions. I'm just going to say instructions. This is the instructions button when the user wants to like know how the game works. Then we need another button for the user to submit the answer. So I'm going to just say submit. Then I'm almost done with the form design. I have to just name my controls. So in this case, I have a button. So let me do this A up to Z. Then I'm going to say btn instruction. You know how to do this. Then btn submit. Then this is your submit button. Then this one is a combo box, so I'm going to say cbx user option, something like this. So we have the user option. Yeah, this is too basic. You can make this look nice. For the form, I can change the text to let's call it rock paper scissors. Then it's going to change the, yeah, this is basic. Maybe I can change the background color, but I'm not concerned about those things. This is just the basic. Or let me just change the background color of the form. So back color, I will choose let's see, control active border, something like that. Yeah, much better. Then you guys can make it more nice. So this is my form. When I execute this without running any code, I'm going to get so it's still running. Let me do this. Let me see. What went wrong? Let me check here. Oh, it's here. I don't know what was the problem. So this is my form. When I click here, I can select the user can select an option, then instruction, then you have your submit. That's the form. Then now we are done with the form. We can go to the process or the pseudocode instead. So you can either use the flowchart or you can use a pseudocode. In this case, I'm using a pseudocode. So the first thing that I need to do is to declare my variables, then get user input, then generate a random number between 0 and 2. Then I have to generate the computer's input based on the random numbers. Since we cannot like randomly create these rock, paper, scissors, we will create a random number from 0 to 2, where 0 represents rock, 1 represents paper, 2 represents scissors. And how are we going to choose these? This is going to be your if statements. So if the generated number is 0, then we are going to choose rock. If the generated number is 1, we are going to choose paper. Then if the generated number is 2, we are going to choose scissors. Then after that, we have to determine if the user won. So here are the possible options. The computer can choose rock, then user chooses rock, so it's a draw. Computer chooses rock, user chooses paper, then the user wins because the paper will fold the rock. Then computer chooses rock, then user chooses scissors, then the user will lose because rock breaks scissors, and so on. I have like 9 possible combinations. So that's it. This is you are going to use your if statements here, but I'll explain how it works. Then okay, declaring variable is straightforward. Let me see for the instructions. For the instructions, I can just, when they click instruction, I can say message box.show. Then here you can explain to the user what will happen. Maybe I can say string output equals to something like welcome to my rock, paper, scissors game, something. Something like this. Then I don't know, plus new line. I can then output plus equals to, then you can put the first instruction, or you can put like multiple instructions. In this case, I'm not that concerned. You can Google what are the instructions, but in this case the user just choose. It can be complicated as you want, but I'm going to keep it simple. Then it's going to, every time we click on this instruction button, it's going to display the instructions that you have written. Then let me see. So we are done with this with the instruction button. So this is just a general idea of what you would do for the instruction. Next thing that we have to do is the submit. So we follow our pseudocode. So we have to declare variables. That's the first thing. So in this case, I said we need two variables. So string to store the user's input or user input or user's choice, whatever. User input as a string. I'm just going to initialize it to an empty string. Then computer input, again empty string, then output or result again empty string. It's just a good practice to initialize your variables. Then I need an integer to represent the random number. So for the user input, get inputs from there. Here I can initialize the number to 0 from the user. So in this case, we are just storing, get inputs from the form and store them in variables. So in this case, we are taking user input. It's going to store what? And I think, I did name cbx user option dot text. So on my left I have a string, on my right I have a string. Dot text, it's a string, so no need to convert. So we are trying to store the text that's inside the combo box inside this user input. Then the next thing, before we go to the next thing, let me explain how random numbers work. So I don't know if you guys can see, but for random numbers are numbers that are randomly generated by the computer. There are 3 steps that you need to follow when working with random numbers. So the first step is to declare an integer variable to store the random number. In this case, we are focusing on integer based random numbers. So we have to declare an integer variable to store the random value. So the purpose of a variable always is to store like values. So declare an integer variable to store the random number. So we did that, if I'm not mistaken. That's the int random number. Then create a random object using the random class. So you are going to learn more about classes and how to create them in INF154. For now, just know that you have to create a random object using the random class. Then the last step is to generate a random number and store it in a variable. So as an example to demonstrate the above steps, so declaring a variable int num, then creating the random object, you say random, then you give it a name. This name can be anything. Then you say is equals to, then you say new. We are creating a new random object. This new random object means we are creating a new random object. So again, don't be concerned. You are going to understand this next semester. So random, just know that it's just random. On the right hand side, it's new random. Here rand can be anything. Then how do we generate the random number? To generate the random number, it's rand.next, then open bracket, then you put the minimum number, then the maximum number. So this minimum number is included, this maximum number it's not included. Then you store that in a variable. When you say equals to, you are storing the result of this in this variable. So in this case, this code will randomly generate a random number from 0 to 4 excluding 5. So let me try to demonstrate this in an actual C# online compiler. Let me do this. Let me try to demonstrate this in a compiler or in an online thing. So I'm going to have an int for the number that I want to create. That's my step 1. Then again, I need my random. Let me do this. Let me see if this is a large. Yeah, I guess it's the maximum font size, but it's fine. So random, then I give it a name. I can say random generator. It can be anything. Random number generator. It can be anything. This name can be anything. Then new random, like that. Now we are creating a new random object from the random class. Then the last step is to do what? Is to store that, is to actually generate the random number and store it inside the random generator variable. So to create a random number, we say dot next. Then we can put our minimum, then our maximum. For example, this will create a random number from 0 to 3, excluding 4. So then I'm going to print this. So don't be concerned about this. It's just printing number to string. Okay, you can say to string, something like that. So let's see how it works. So now I execute this. You see it generated 2. Then let's execute again. 2 again. Then 3. So it's random. We can't even guess what will be the output because it's random. So this is the general process of working with random numbers. First, you create your variable that will store the random number. Then you create a random number or a random object using from the random class. Then after creating the random object, we are going to use that random object to generate a random number and store that result in the number. So in this case 0 to 4. So if you don't put like the minimum, it's going to, or by default, it's going to generate a number between 0 to 4 if you don't put the minimum. But if you want, you can put the minimum. The minimum can be anything. Even if I say 2 to 3, it's going to work. Now it will generate a random number between from 2 to 3, excluding 4. So that's how random numbers work. So from that knowledge, we are going to use that random number is equals to, this will fall under the process. So for the process, we are going to generate a random number for the computer. So let's generate a random number. How do we do that? So in this case, we have random number is equals to, what's our random object? Our random object, we haven't created one, so we need a random object. So random, I can call it r equals to new random object. It can be anything, this specific name. So r dot next, then I'm going to say 0 to 3 because I want 0, 1, 2. So 3 will not be included. Then we know that this line will generate a random number and store it in random number variable. That's the meaning of that line. It will just generate a random number and store the result in this random number variable. Now that we created a random number, we want to create a choice for our computer. So I'm going to use if statements. So I can say if the number we created, in this case it's a random number. If the number is equals to 0, we can say, okay, the computer input equals to rock, for example. Then we can say else if random number is equals to, when you say double equals to, you are referring that you are comparing if these two are equal. So is equals to 1. Then if that number is equals to 1, we are going to say, okay, computer input equals to paper, for example. Then else, you can say else if, or since this is the last option. Otherwise, we are going to say computer input equals to scissors, like that. The order doesn't matter here since it's random. So if the number generated is 0, we are going to choose rock. If the randomly generated number is 1, we are going to choose paper, and otherwise we are going to choose scissors. So in this like session, we are not concerned about the theories. I assume that you know the basics of these if statements. Then since we are using this random number, and we are using equals to, random number is equals to, again, then we have the else. Instead, we can use the switch statement. An alternative will be a switch statement. So what's the relationship between an if statement and a switch statement? Let's see. So this is the relationship between an if statement. This works only if you are comparing if two things are equal. Like, for example, if A is equals to B, then do this. Else, if A is equals to C, do this. Then else, if A equals to D, do this. And else, we are going to do whatever. Then notice that this A is the same on if, else if, else if. So since this A is the same, we can put this under a switch case or a switch statement. So we are going to say switch. We are going to compare this A with whatever we are going to put inside. So on the right, we have if A equals to B. So you are going to say case, then you put the B. You are comparing A with B. So this means if this A is equals to this B, we are going to do this. Then after putting whatever code, you break always. So you compare if A equals to B, when you convert it to a switch statement, you are going to put the A inside this switch, then case, then what are you comparing this A to? You are comparing the A to B. If they are equal, you are going to execute that specific code. You are going to execute, then you break. This means you end. So in an if statement, we know that if this condition is true, we execute this, then we ignore everything. That's the meaning of this break. Then the next thing is the if A is equals to C. In this case, we are still comparing the same A. So the second case, so we have the first case, A is equals to B. The second case is A is equals to C. So if this A is equals to, this C, do that, then we break. We ignore everything. We just execute that, then break. Then the other thing is case D. So if A equals to D, then we are going to do those, then break. Basically, we are comparing this A, the A. So switch A, if this switch A means we are comparing this A to the cases we have. If A equals to B, we are going to do this and break. If A is equals to C, do that and break. If A equals to D, then do that and break. Then else else it's represented by default. If all these conditions fail, we are going to execute this default. It works the same as your else. That's the relationship. So as a challenge, I guess you can rewrite this as a switch statement instead of if statements. Then okay, we did generate the user input. Now what are we supposed to do? Now we can do this. Now we can decide the winner based on these possibilities. Notice that every time I'm comparing rock, which is the computer's input, with rock for the user, rock, computer, paper, rock, scissors. You see this rock, it's the same. Then this paper is the same, and scissors is the same. This means I can do a switch statement like for the computer's input. Switch if it's this, or I can do like 9 if statements if I want. If computer's option is equals to rock and user's option equals to rock, it's a draw. Else if computer's option equals to rock and user's option equals to paper, it's a win. Then else if computer's option equals to rock and user's option equals to scissors, lost. And I can repeat that how many times? 9 times. Or alternatively, I can use a switch statement. So if we are in this state rock represents the computer state, we can just compare it with these 3. Then otherwise, if we are in this state, the computer's option is paper, we can compare it with these 3 states, and scissors this. So how am I going to represent that in code? So I'm going to put a switch. So switch, what are we comparing? In this case, we are comparing computer's input. So the first case is if the computer's input is let's say rock, like that. We are going to do what? Do something. Then we are going to break, like that. Then the second case, so that was my first case, this rock, it was my first case. Second case, it's paper. So for the second case, I'm going to say, okay, case paper. This means if the computer's input is paper, we are going to do this, do something. Then when we are done, we are breaking again. Then here I can say case scissors, or since it's the last option, I can just say default. This is your default option. Do this, then you can break. Notice that you can rewrite this as an if statement. You can say if computer user is equals to rock, we are going to do something else. If computer input equals to paper, do something. Then the default is your else. So what are we going to compare? We know that if computer user it's rock, we want to now we are only concerned about this right part. So we can say if user's option equals to rock, it's a draw. So we can say, okay, we know that under this do something, we know that the computer's option will be rock when this like sequence of instruction is going to be executed. So we can say, okay, under this we can say if user input is equals to rock. So the computer chose rock, user chose rock. So what's the output? or the result will be draw because they are the same. Then else if user input equals to what, now we can choose any, is equals to, let's say, paper, for example. So we know that in this case the computer chose rock. Then if the user chooses paper, this means the user wins, so win or something like that. Then the default one is what? It's loss actually, because those are the three possible. It's either you draw, you win, or you lost. So we can see loss. Then again, when the computer chooses paper, this case represents for the computer, because for this switch statement we said computer input. So for this computer, I'm going to say, okay, since I'm going to compare rock, paper, then scissors, like as you can see from this diagram, it's always rock, paper, scissors, rock, paper, scissors, rock, paper, scissors. So now it's just copy and paste. For these, it's just copy and paste. I mean, not this. Yeah, for this, now we can copy and paste under paper. So we are going to copy and paste this under paper. We know that the computer chose paper. What if the user chooses rock? Who wins? Rock folds paper, so paper folds rock, so the user is going to lose. So lose. And if the computer chooses paper and the user also chooses paper, then it's a draw. Then if the computer chooses paper and the user chooses scissors, the default one is the scissors, so the user will win. Again, it's copy and paste from the first one. Then now this means if the computer didn't choose rock and didn't choose paper, this means by default they chose scissors. So in this case, computer chose scissors, user chooses rock. Who wins? It's the user, because rock breaks scissors. Then computer chose scissors, user chooses paper. Who wins? The computer. So for the user, we are going to say lost. Then otherwise it's just both scissors, so it's a draw, something like this. That was the process. You can do this using nested if statements. You can do this using nested switch statements, or you can do a combination of both like I did. So as an exercise, you will try to do this using nested if statements, and try this using nested switch statements also. Then after we are done with the output, we can display on a message box. Maybe we want to display the result now. Let me see. Hopefully I'm not putting on the row. Now we can display the result. Message box dot show. Then we are going to say result. Then let's see if our code works as expected. You can do it manually or you can just execute. But I don't think we have errors. Just assume if we get an incorrect thing, we have to debug manually. So it's still building. Let me see. So it's still building, I don't know why it's taking time, but yeah, then it's getting there. So let's see now. Rock. Let's submit. Draw, you see, let's just submit rock and see. Draw. Laws, you see it's random. We don't know what's the computer's option. And we can modify this further. For example, we can say, okay, for the output, let's show the user what happened in the game. We can just say, okay, for the user, we are going to show you what happened. Maybe I can say string output. This is a bad habit. Don't do it like this. Output is equals to, okay, computer choice is this. We want to show the user that what the computer selected. Choice, in this case, is the computer's choice. Or then we move to a new line. Then we want to add to the previous output. We user you selected. Here we are referring to the user. The user. Did I output? Sorry. Then plus. Then whatever the user selected. Then we add a new line like that. No, in this case it's user input. Then we want to say maybe therefore plus is equals to therefore something like this. Then we want to add the result we got. So this is basic string concatenation, nothing fancy. So we want to display the output instead. Output instead, yeah, something like this. So let's see how it's going to work now. So we are going to select paper, whatever. You see now it shows that the computer chose paper. You selected rock. So who wins in this case? Paper falls rock, so the user will lose. Again, if I submit, then the computer selected scissors, you selected rock. Therefore, who wins? You win because rock crashes scissors or breaks scissors. Something basic like that. Then let's first execute this again and see. Let's say the user doesn't, okay, instruction, let's test there. It displays the instructions. Then let's say the user just clicks submit. What's going to happen? Look, computer selected paper. The user didn't select anything, but the user won. How? So we have a logical error. So we have to validate the input. So this will mean that we have to put everything, yeah, the process and the output, we are going to put it where? Under an if statement. So we are going to say, okay, for the process, we are only going to do the process if user input is equals to rock or user input is equals to paper, then or user input is equals to scissors. Otherwise, we consider that as what? An invalid input. Yeah, as an invalid input. Or in this case, since we used a combo box, it's much easier. We just determine if user input is empty. it's empty. Then we can say message box dot show, then we can say invalid input, like that. Then otherwise else we can execute our process, something like that. So we just determine if this thing is empty, the user input, then we just display a message invalid. Then if you want, you can give it a title, so I can say error. If you put a second option, the second option represents the title. Then here I can say for the title, I can say results, like that. Then yeah, that will be the thing. Let's see, executing. Let's see if now it works as expected. So instructions, very basic. Then submit. You see now I get this error message, invalid input. Even if I try invalid input, because of that input validation, that if statement, this one, if the input is invalid, we just, otherwise we execute our process as normal. As you can see, this is an else, then we have if. So we have an else, then switch, then like you can see, it's nested, it's just nested, everything is nested inside like other things. Then another thing that I can show you is how to debug, actually. Yeah, how to debug, so you can, to see how your code works. So after executing your form, you can put a breakpoint. To put a breakpoint, let's say you want to debug from, let's say from here. So from here, so I'm going to go to the left of this line here, 37. I go to the left, I will see this second. Then I put a breakpoint. This is a breakpoint. So I'm going to, now I can say the user must select, let's say rock, for example. Then I say submit. Let me see. Okay, no, I have to run this first, actually. Yeah, I have to run first. That time I didn't run. So you see the form, it's not showing because I'm debugging. Let me see. So the form is it's not running because I'm debugging. So this is a breakpoint. Only when I step through the breakpoint, okay, it appeared. Let me click this. So I'm going to select an option, maybe rock, then submit. Then you see now it's not running. It takes me to the breakpoint. So it's going to show me what's happening here. Here I will be able to see my inputs. So you see user input, it's empty. Then when I say to step through, I just go here, step into, or you can press F11, or you can look for this. Then you see now my user input will store rock, because on my form I have what? I have rock. Then I can step through again. I'm going to go to this. So let me go back and see what happened. I can go back. Oh, I'll do a separate video for this debugging thing. That's all for this one, I guess.